Please pray with me. May these words that I speak be grounded in my soul, encouraged by the God presence in me. And may these words that you hear be captured by your soul, enlivened by the God presence in you. Amen. I want to begin this morning by attempting to explain what I mean by big love. I believe that love is the very fabric of the universe, the center of all life, and the purpose for existence. We are part of this fabric with our own love center, each and every one of us, with the potential to contribute to this greater love at work everywhere. Our personal expressions of love emanate from the mystery, the great mystery of universal love that binds everything and all things together. This, for me, is big love. It was Jesus' expression of big love, his own personalized expression of big love, that captured the heart of Nicodemus, as we heard last week. The conversation between them is the gospel writer's way to prepare us to engage God and the world in a brand new way. Jesus is experienced in that story as different. Why? Because he is tapped into the divine spirit within his human form, the spirit of love, and has embraced it fully, saying, "Love will be my only guide." Today, in the very next chapter in John's Gospel, we have the story of Jesus' encounter with the woman at the well. I think it was quite deliberate that this would be the first story to follow the story of Nicodemus, because this story demonstrates what big love looks like when it is practiced. For it is only when we allow love to guide us that we can believe in the sanctity and the sacredness of all life and every life. Big love is subversive in a world that is driven by fear. This story of the woman at the well is more subversive than we could even possibly imagine. It seems pretty tame in our 21st century Western mindset. But in ancient Mediterranean culture, men and women held clear roles and places in society. 3 of those carefully guarded norms are broken in this story. The first involves the well itself, which was a public place. And there were separate times for men and women to gather there. Women gathered in the morning and the evening, and men gathered at midday. This woman comes to the well at noon, according to the story, breaking all the rules. She probably chose to come then because of the shame she would have experienced from the other women that would gather at the women's time because of her life situation. She was many times divorced and now living common law. The second breach of the rules is that Jesus and this woman engage in conversation. Men and women were never to speak to one another in public outside of family relationships. The third, and for me the most incredible breach, is one that is very, very rarely even mentioned. And it comes when the woman, now believing Jesus to be the Messiah, goes to the marketplace. It is still the middle of the day. It is still the men's time. The marketplace would be full of nothing but men. And she talks to all of them publicly. If this story were actually true, this woman would have been stoned to death immediately. And Jesus would have been arrested for breaking the law. But this story wasn't written to tell about an actual historic event. Rather, it was to demonstrate the incredible magnitude and power of big love. John Spong writes, Jesus engaged the Samaritan woman at the well in conversation about theology, the nature of God and liturgy, and the proper way to worship God. He thus poured into that woman a respect, a dignity that called her into new dimensions of what it means to be human. And Jesus didn't even choose a proper Jewish woman to engage with. He chose a divorced Samaritan woman, the lowest of low in the society of his time. And he welcomed her. He welcomed her as a disciple. This isn't a story of Jesus offering forgiveness to a lowly and sinful creature as it has so often been interpreted. This is a story of Jesus embracing the goodness in this woman and giving her honor, even restoring her life in her community. This is the practice of big love. This is the power of living water. The story itself is a carefully crafted conversation in which Jesus moves the woman from ignorance to enlightenment. She experiences a nourishing of her spirit and a call to live her truth, to live from her own love center. She is given the gift of living water. And living water is another way that John weaves ancient Hebrew scripture into the life of Jesus. It is in Isaiah 58 that we hear, God offers life to your bones, and you will be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never run dry. Again, we can only partially appreciate this. People that live in desert conditions understand thirst in a way that we never could, except for maybe a few days in August. Jesus offers to all those he encounters living water so they will never again be thirsty. The water I will give will become in them a spring gushing up to the life of the age to come. And what is living water? It is to love fully and completely. To live in the fullness of the Spirit of life, all that you were meant to be. Just like Karamba. Big love requires a willingness to risk, a willingness to be vulnerable. Brené Brown, who is a scholar, author, and public speaker, says this, and I love this. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love. It is the source of hope, empathy, and authenticity. If we want deeper clarity in our purpose or deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives, vulnerability is the path. Who better demonstrated that than Jesus in his short life? Jesus was vulnerable and he risked constantly for love's sake. And the reward in this story was a deep connection to the soul of a complete stranger, a foreign woman at a well. Richard Rohr uses a different term. He talks about tuning our hearts to a greater perception. I think he is talking about big love in another way. And he says, as we tune our hearts to greater perception, we'll begin to experience God almost like a force field, to borrow a metaphor from physics. We're already inside the force field, whether we know it or not. alongside Hindus and Buddhists and Muslims and every race and nationality. Even Samaritans. I added that. God doesn't stop or begin at the Mexico-US border, the Israel-Palestine border, the border between South and North Korea, or any such line in the sand. The divine force field is all-encompassing. And so he continues, when you see people protecting their small tribes and self-constructed identities as if they were lasting or inherently meaningful, you know that they've not yet experienced substantial reality. I would say they've not yet experienced big love. Rohr concludes, when you allow the flow of substantial reality through your life, you are a universal person living beyond these tiny boundaries that humans love to create. Faith becomes a daily readiness to allow and trust the force field, knowing that it's good, knowing that it's totally on your side, and that you're already inside of it. This way of being in the world, living inside of big love and contributing to it, is the way of Jesus. It was his own expression of big love that touched, affirmed, and transformed this woman at the well. And for Karamba, in case you're wondering why that story this morning, he was desperate to fit in. He did not feel welcome. And he was ridiculed, not unlike the woman from Samaria. And it is water that brings him life. Plunging deep. Plunging deep. And it's not just about plunging into a swimming pool or Okanagan Lake. It's plunging deep into the well within, into that water inside each of us, and finding their love. This is the way of being that we are called to. This is the practice of love.